Good afternoon, friends. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to chat about seeds, seed saving. We're going to talk about why you should save seeds, how to save seeds, and some kind of miscellaneous things about seeds. And it's my ice maker. So I've got a lot of lists here because I've kind of divided the seeds based on so I've separated the different vegetables into different categories, and that's how we're going to kind of go through the different seeds. So I've got my notes here, so I'm going to probably be referring to them for a little bit. So why should you save seeds? I mean, obviously it's easy enough to go to Home Depot or go to Summer Winds or order seeds online. It's easy enough to do that. You can even go to the Great American Seed Up and get bulk seeds. So right now, as things stand, there's what seems to be plenty of access to seeds. So it might seem like an extra task or extra work to actually invest your time in saving seeds. So the first reason why, especially here in Arizona, I think it's a good idea, a really good idea to save seeds is because of our unique climate. And I didn't think a lot about this until a couple of different plant swaps where one of you that comes, his name is Michael, but Michael is really focused on propagating and saving seeds because they're what we would then consider desert adapted or adapted to our climate. So that means that seed and the parent plant that it came from it has already had to deal with our climate, has already went through that and hopefully adopted and adapted to the climate and developed characteristics that its seeds then have a better chance of surviving in our climate, because that's one of the most unique things about seeds, in my opinion, is that not all seeds do great in every climate. Like there's plenty of what they call like paste type tomatoes that I'm not going to try to grow here anymore because I just don't think they're the right ones for my climate. Whereas there's other paste tomatoes where I'm like, this is the right one for my climate. It's the one that did the best. It was the strongest. And that's the one I'll be doing from there on out. So the first one is because your parent plant that you took the seeds from, we're going to surmise that it's developed characteristics that enabled it to adapt well to our climate. And the second reason why you want to collect seeds is food security. And you know, a couple of years ago when I'd made kind of another seed type video, I kind of talked about all of the conspiracy theories around food insecurity, but this was like back before anything with the, you know, what happened with the closings of everything. This was back before the inflation and all the things that are going on globally. But now that those things have happened and we've experienced numerous shortages out there, like the newest one I saw today is that there's going to be a shortage of chickpeas because it's something that gets imported a lot from another foreign country. We'll just say that because I'm not trying to get political or anything like that. That's never what my channel is about. But the fact that there's been shortages of meat, the fact that there have been shortages of different types of food due to import-export reasons, or like I said, because one country that we're not doing business with is no longer selling us that type of food. So when I thought about chickpeas, which are garbanzo beans, I was like, oh, note to self, get some seeds, grow that, save the seeds, and I never have to worry about that. So as long as, especially since I've gotten a lot better at growing from seed, germinating seeds, having healthy plants from seeds, I feel more secure than I really probably ever have about food because I know how I can plan. I know what we eat, and I know that I've got the seeds, and I know how to make the seeds grow into a plant and produce the food that we eat. So that food security that saving seeds can give you is really priceless, because another common one that's not a food shortage thing, but is like the lettuce. Like, how many times in the last couple years has this lettuce or that lettuce or that lettuce been recalled because of listeria or some other terrible thing that makes people sick to their stomachs? Well, in my mind, why buy lettuce? Grow your own. It's fast to grow, it's easy to grow, and as long as you've got seeds and you're collecting seeds from your lettuce, then you've got a never-ending supply of lettuce as long as you plant the seed and water the plant. So the third reason why I think that seed saving is important is seed genetics and the preservation of those genetics. I'm consistently amazed and just in awe of the seed banks that are out there in the world, and that's because for as long as the time has been going, people have been inherently aware of the fact that we need to and should save seeds because of the genetics alone, you know, because I can't think of the author's name right now. I think it's like Craig Luet. I know I'm messing up his last name, but he wrote the book Epic Tomatoes, and if I mess that up, I'm going to put the real information up here. But he really dialed me into all of these people, like from the 20s on through the 50s and the 60s and on into the 70s and 80s, that were saving and sharing these tomato genetics, because in this lifetime we take tomatoes for granted, but tomatoes really haven't been a plant that just forever grew here and was forever eaten here. You know, if you go back to the late 1800s, people mostly grew tomatoes to keep pests away from their garden or to be a trap plant. And a lot of the people that were new to America thought that they were plenty gross. But over time, you know, we've come to love tomatoes, and we've come to love the diversity of tomatoes. And so it's really amazing to know that for all these years, people have been preserving different genetics. And if you're interested, like in that book, he talks about a couple of different seed banks that you can actually contact, request seeds from them, form a partnership with them where you're also sharing back seeds with them. Another beautiful example of seed genetic preservation is with the Native Seed Search down in Tucson. You know, because, you know, like they'll give seeds to, say, a tribal community or a community with the sole purpose that that community is going to keep so many seeds, and so many of those seeds are going to come back to the Native Seed Search, continually perpetuating the preservation of those genetics. So that was my number 3. And number 4, and I really don't like to be a person that perpetuates the idea of chaos or the idea of negativity. I really and truly want to believe that everything's going to work out, but at the same time, if you wanted to know more about things that I've done to make sure that my kids never go hungry, I'm willing to talk about that. I would never call us preppers, but I worked in an industry for so long that was really hinged around doom, you know, and that's kind of what, I mean, I worked in the gold industry, you know, and most people buy silver and gold as a hedge against doom, you know. So, and so that my number 4 is that seeds could kind of be a commodity, you know. If we came to a desperate situation with food, or a desperate situation with any other types of things, even the monetary system, then your seeds could actually be something that you could trade with, that would be very highly prized. Because trust me, not everybody on your block, in your neighborhood, in the city, in your family, not everybody's got a garden. Not everybody has seeds. So if we go back to number 2 in food security, most people don't inherently have the seeds to give them that food security. So if they came to an insecure spot, then now your seeds are as good as money. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. But in a worst case scenario situation, seeds could be a commodity. So quick review, I'm all about the whys of saving seeds is, especially for us, it gets them acclimated to our climate, gives us desert acclimated seeds to work with. Number 2, food security. Number 3, the preservation of seed genetics. And number 4, the chance that maybe your seeds could be a commodity if you wanted to part with any of them, you know. If it's if it's calendula, I'm rich. You know, this is from one season of going along and collecting the flower tops. Now, Ziploc bags is something I do way after the fact because there can always be moisture within the seeds. And I know I talk about organza bags all the time, but this is like, I could make a video on the 1 million reasons why I love organza bags. But seed saving is one of my favorite things about these organza bags because it's real easy to carry along with me while I'm cutting, and it's real easy to toss the seeds into, plenty of airflow so that the seeds can continue to dry out. And then sometimes I think I should be called the lazy gardener instead of all-purpose mom. But if you're get off track, then this is a great way to keep them until you've got time to mess with them. And this is kind of on my mind because this time of year when the temperatures are like stupid hot, then this is the time of the year that I'm inside processing seeds because I don't feel comfortable temperature-wise to be outside doing anything else. So I like these because I can just let these pile up outside. The other day I processed not pak choy, it's a yod fa, which is a Chinese broccoli. This is like a lettuce leaf basil, makes really huge leaves, and I've got so many more seeds out there that need to be processed. The next part of the how is kind of how do you actually get the seed. And so I split the vegetables up into categories, and the categories are not so obvious, semi-obvious, and obvious. So to start off with, I think I'll go backwards. I'm going to start out with the ones that are obvious. So obvious things, obvious vegetables that we can easily, obviously see how to collect the seeds would be like peppers, cucumbers, melons, okra, squash, pumpkin, eggplant, gourds, because you can see the seeds. So some of those, if it's a pepper, you can just rake them off when you cut the pepper open, or if it's like any of the rest of those things, melon, squash, pumpkin, eggplant, or gourd, when you open it up, just scrape those seeds out, rinse them off, get all that gunk off of them, boom, you've got seeds that are ready to save. And again, you want to kind of let those dry out on a paper towel after you rinse them off, let them get good and dry, and then you can set them up for storage. One thing that I didn't address on there was okra, because okra is going to make pods, and once the pods are dried out on the plant, then you just crack those pods open and boom, there's your seeds. Now with these plants, as well as tomatoes that are on another category, but I'm going to touch base, I really would encourage you probably to try and save seeds from these plants in the first couple of fruit or vegetable that you get from the plant. And the reason why I say that is because you've got less chance of cross-pollination occurring when you do that. So if you get seeds from your first couple of peppers, or if you get seeds from your first couple of cucumbers, they've got less chance of having been cross-pollinated with something else. So the genetics of that seed should be more true to that plant. So try to get those early on. Don't wait till the end of the season where, you know, your cucumbers crossed with this and that and this and that. Now, a semi-obvious category, the first one there is tomatoes. Now that seems semi-obvious because when you cut a tomato open, you see the tomato seeds. Now, and again, this is take your first earliest tomatoes, because even though the tomato flower is self-pollinating, it doesn't mean other pollinators aren't visiting those flowers and cross-pollinating. You know, maybe running your Roma back with a cherry, and so again, your seeds later on down the line that you pick from your tomatoes could possibly not be as true to the original parent genetics as you would like them to be. Now, so even though tomatoes are semi-obvious, there's two ways that you would go about processing tomato seeds, and that's because tomato seeds kind of have like a filmy sack around them, if you will, and it's just the fruit's way of protecting the seed. So some people do a fermentation process where you just get a jar or a cup, whatever, you put the seeds that you scrape out of or squish out of the tomato into this water, and then you cover it up so nothing else can get into it. And what happens is it starts to kind of ferment in there. It could get real white and kind of gross at the top. But what's going to happen is that's all the kind of gel casing separating out from itself, and then all the seeds will drop down to the bottom. Now, if you're not into the expanse of that, who cares? You know, squeeze your tomato seeds or scrape your tomato seeds out onto a paper towel, let them dry. They still have just as great a chance of germinating and producing a plant. They just might not be as pretty in the packet, but it's your seed, so who cares? I've even seen people say they just plant the whole paper towel or whatever that they put them on. So next on the semi-obvious list of how to save seeds would be beans, corn, and peas. Now, I say semi-obvious because, again, you can see that the bean inside of the pod with beans and peas and the actual corn on the corn husk, those are the seeds. Why I say semi-obvious is because we want to remember that needs to dry on the plant in order for the seed to become fully mature. Okay, so as we go down this list, that's what it has to do with, is making sure that the seed is fully mature. So as long as a bean pod or a corn or a pea stays on the plant, then the plant is continuing to feed that seed well after you decided to pick it. So if you think about if you've ever picked like sweet peas or like snow peas, you know, when they're first on the vine, they've got like little bitty beans inside of the pod. But then the longer it stays on there, man, those things get really, really fat. And that really, really fat bean that's what you want for a seed. But it still needs to go ahead and dry and finish completely on the plant. So even though that's why I call it semi-obvious, because there's a little bit more to it. And you might be overly eager to be like, oh, here's my green bean, I'm just gonna snap this off and take it in the house and let it dry in the window. And those might not necessarily be mature enough to actually germinate and grow in your garden. How frustrating is that? Now, opposed to the semi-obvious and the obvious, when for the most part we want to harvest some of those in the early stages of the plant's life or production, the not so obvious vegetables that we would seed save from, you want to harvest them at the very end of their life, like the beans, the peas, and the corn. So on that list would be lettuce, brassicas, flowers just because, herbs like dill, cilantro, parsley, carrots, all the root vegetables, rosella, onions. Now those are on the not so obvious, because when you look at those plants, nothing about that plant is saying, I'm a seed, the way that, say, a cucumber or a pepper is when you cut it open. Like even if you cut open lettuce or you cut open broccoli, there's nothing there saying, this is the seed, this is how you grow it. And that's because all of these plants on this list have to go through a process of producing going all the way into the flowering stage in order to produce the seed. So I've talked about this a million times. I'll repeat it for anybody that's not new around, or anybody that's new around here. But you know, like your broccolis, your cauliflowers, your collards, your yod fa, your pak choi, all of those brassicas, however you look at it as how you eat it, that is only the midway part of life for that plant. That plant, every little nodule on the top of your broccoli, every little nodule on the top of your cauliflower, all those parts will shoot straight up and bolt, producing tall stalks that then develop flowers. And those flowers need to stay on the plant, get pollinated, get loved on by the bees. And as that happens, then as the flower passes away, then it's going to produce seed pods. So again, much like the corn, the beans, and the peas, you want those seed pods to stay right there on the plant to become completely dry, so that plant spends their duration or the end of its life feeding that seed and getting it ready to produce. So these are all end of life things here. I put rosella on here because it's not so obvious, because like if you've seen the calyx of a rosella, you know, it kind of looks like a rose bud that has either not opened or is finished and kind of come back in on itself. And so you pull the edges of the calyx off, and in the middle is like a little ball, and that little ball is what you would crack open, and that's where the seeds are in that plant. So I say not so obvious because, again, when you pick rosella, you know what you're going for in terms of making tea or something like that, but you can't obviously see exactly where the seeds are. So that is kind of the how. A couple of miscellaneous tips that I want to give you, and I just want to go back and really stress that all of those not so obvious things have to be super end of the life for the plant. It needs to be completely dried out, like the yod fa that I took seeds from. It was a big producer, and it had gotten away from me. I was rarely harvesting it, and it, between the bag and the plant itself, it was about 8 feet tall, and it had cajillions, that's my favorite word, cajillions of pods on it. And I just went through with one of my organza bags and I just raked them all off the stems, stuck them in the bag until another day when I had time to sit down and separate all the pods and separate all the chuff, and then get them over into something that I could save them in, like a container. So some miscellaneous points that I want to bring up about seed saving is like grocery store seeds. There's plenty of times you go, you have an amazing watermelon or whatever it is that you have, you're like, this is so good, I garden, I've got soil, I know how to water stuff, so I'm going to save this seed. And there's nothing wrong with that. You definitely would probably want to choose organic fruits and vegetables if you were going to seed save like that. A lot of plants have had some modifications, or a lot of the things that you get in the store have had modifications done to them to keep them from producing other seeds or to inhibit growth or different things like that. So definitely try to stick with organic, even though we all know that's kind of a loose term out there in the real world. But the other thing with saving seeds from things that you buy in the grocery store is just a lot of times you're going to run into hybrid seeds, and there's nothing wrong with hybrid seeds. Hybrid seeds aren't GMO. It doesn't mean they're modified. It just means that a cross was made, so one type of tomato was crossed with another type of tomato. And a lot of times when you buy on purpose, you buy hybrid seeds, you're buying them because the best features of each plant were brought into one. And for whatever reason, maybe they have a resilience against powdery mildew, and they have a resilience against this. All these factors that would otherwise give that gardener a problem with growing it have been worked into these hybrid genetics that then give them less problems. And there's nothing wrong with hybrids. There's nothing wrong with you getting a fruit or vegetable that's organic, taking the seeds out of it, the seeds potentially being hybrid, and you growing them. The only problem that's going to happen is might not necessarily taste like exactly what you got it from. You know, it might not be true to the original parent genetics. And that's another thing about, you know, like one of a hybrid tomato that I like is the Celebrity. And I also like hybrid broccoli called Pac-Man. Now, great plants, and I could save seeds from those plants, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is since it was a cross, I might not get the Pac-Man broccoli that I like, and I might not get the Celebrity tomato. Like, I might get more of a tomato that was closer to one of the parents. I might get one of the, I might get a broccoli that was closer to one of the other parents in that cross. So it's just it's taking the risk of the letdown that you might not necessarily get whatever it is, that you won't get exactly like what it is that you were hoping to get from those genetics. So those are a couple things to think about there in terms of store-bought or saving seed from store-bought fruits and vegetables. And if you're going to save them from something that you got at the farmer's market, you might ask the person, like, is this a hybrid to begin with? Because if it is, then you know if you plant the seeds, it's okay. You're going to get vegetables or fruit. It just might not be as good or exactly like the last thing that you got it from. So I hope that this was helpful to you to kind of get you at least thinking, because I love the thought of encouraging you, but sometimes it's just getting yourself to thinking about something like, yeah, I want to start saving seeds. And so the thinking about it turns into a little bit of action. And then the next thing you know, you've got a little bit of seeds. So I watched a video of myself from 2 years ago, and I'm wondering where all those seeds were that I showed in the video. I can put a link right here. But I'm like, where are all those seeds that I saved? Because that was the first time that I'd ever saved seeds. So I hope that that's what this does, is spark the thought of maybe this is something that you want to do based on our discussion about why you would want to save seeds, how in terms of identifying where the viable seed is, and the miscellaneous things that we discussed. And otherwise, I hope you're finding some ways to stay cool. And I just shared with you what mine is, and that's to be inside working and processing on seeds. So I hope you have the best day ever, friends, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.